Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. In a marriage, like any partnership, you're gonna have to come to a consensus as a team. Now, there's gonna be certain aspects of the marriage that one partner is gonna handle more than the other. Like one might handle the cooking more, one might handle car work more, etc. But there's going to be a handful of things that you're going to want to come to a consensus together, like what house you're buying, when you're going to get the new car, how much you're going to be able to save for the kids' college fund. Any big financial decisions would definitely count there, especially if you are investing in a business. Ray seems to have not gotten that memo, as we find out in today's episode, and that, of course, is net worth. Season 5, Episode 20. See the return of his two buddies from Season 2, Scott and Walter, played by Brian Posman and Bob Odenkirk, which Bob channeling a little bit of his future Breaking Bad success there. Before I get it too far into the video, just a reminder, if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to continuously support, go to Patreon link. You'll be able to gain access to videos early, and you'll also be able to suggest topics for future videos, such as whatever happened to blue-collar workers in cinema, or even what about reviews such as Westworld. And of course, you just want to do a one-off, PayPal route is the way to go. Either way, your support is appreciated. Net worth. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is one I saw in syndication, and like a lot of them, the opening scene is what was cut out, because you don't really need that opening scene. I mean, it lays the foundation story-wise, but in the syndicated cut, you jump right into it, and you see that Scott and Walter are giving him the spiel. Now, Ray's very excited to hear the spiel because his buddies are now getting into the go-kart business, which is a little different from what Walter said he was doing before when we saw him 3 seasons before, where he said he was studying to be a rabbi. He said it was freaking hard, so I'm going to guess that it was so hard he had to drop out, or he realized, yeah, it's not for him. Now, based on their presentation, it is still going to be a faith-friendly place, so they're going to have some type of religious thing there, so he's not completely disregarding his faith and the faith he was trying to teach. Now, from the beginning, you can already tell that Deborah is not going to like this proposal. Like, she calls the friends dorks. And I know she means it in a playful way, but there are times when Deborah calls Ray or his buddies dorks where you could kind of see some of her old high school self coming out. I mean, we saw it in an episode before, and we're going to see it a couple more times. But it is what it is. At that point, the thing that really grinds my gears about it is that she makes fun of them for talking on walkie-talkies they built themselves. I'm like, you got to have some engineering knowledge, at least know how a walkie-talkie works properly. And we do see the homemade walkie-talkie pop up again in this episode. But then her having her decision made up from the beginning, that's where you could kind of go, yeah, that's not nice. And her argument, once they hear the end of the presentation, it doesn't change the fact that it's go-karts. This is going to be the only time I'm really going to side with Ray in this episode right here. That is, and Deborah. Just because it's go-karts doesn't mean it wouldn't be a smart investment. People love go-karts and all that. It's like you don't have to do a big investment, just a small one. But she puts the boot down, doesn't even want any discussion. Which just isn't one of the things in there that I will side with Ray too, is that her just going blatant no is kind of stupid. They should discuss it more, definitely. But once a decision's made, they got to stick with it. And the fact that Ray decided to give them money beforehand, I can understand her reaction when Ray has to tell her. Now, we find out after the fact that all the money that he gave them, which was $1,000, Scott and Walter already spent on the stuff that was shown in the presentation, and they were actually just going there to get more money for investment. So now they're going to go to Robert. Now, Ray has to figure out a way to tell her tenderly. Because we all know what happened the last time Ray made a financial decision. It came back to bite him in the butt. And that, of course, was Season 2 when he was in charge of the checkbook. And to put it as Andy did, wow, you bounced many checks, my friend. And, of course, part of this episode does tie back into that, but I say it's indirectly. But we'll get to that when we get there. He tenderly approaches Deborah and tells her that he gave him $1,000, and you can imagine Deborah is mad. He tries to smooth it over by telling a hobo and $5 story, but that doesn't work so well. But what really does it is the fact that he has to admit that he gave it to him before. And that's what really annoys her. So much so that she takes everything from the bed. Everything. And then, of course, has to turn the air down. Now, it's not just that. It's what he says to her when he's trying to stop the fight. It's my money to screw up with. Now, while that might be true because he's the one that earns the money, since Deborah is a stay-at-home mom and doesn't bring in active money but does do all the housework, she still has an equal say in the financial decisions. And the fact that he had to throw the fact that he earns the money in her face, bad juju there, Ray. And even Marie sides with Deborah about this. You know it's bad when Marie's siding with Deborah over something, like when she slapped Ray, and there's going to be a couple other times, but you know that it's bad there. Now, to prove the point to Ray, she actually starts putting together a list to charge him for being the wife. Now, the one thing, of course, at the end that really is a low blow is the fact that the amount she puts together is more than what Ray makes, which I'm like, okay, Deborah, I think you made your point, but really saying that you're going to charge him more than what he makes to be the wife, okay, that's pushing it a little bit into the fantastical. But, like I said, she's trying to make the point with Ray. And, of course, he was looking at her, rolling his eyes, like, oh, yeah, I think you're using that word kind of loosely. The rest of the family come over, they get into it. Like I said, Deborah brings Marie into it because of the whole thing. She tries to pull, I think I'm entitled to some of this money. Laughing at the stuff she does. It's like, Marie, just because her standard of clean is not the same as your insane one, as we saw in the Humvac episode, doesn't mean she doesn't like a clean house. You just want to go to an insane level with it. There is a difference, little Miss OCD Barone. As to be expected, Frank sides with Ray throughout the whole thing, saying, you bring home the check, you're the king. And, of course, Ray tries to go with the whole thing. Society says I'm the one that matters more with, and I'm the one who makes the decisions and all that. Now, the whole thing about net worth, it doesn't just tie into the fact of who makes the check, but Robert brings up something, and that is, wrongful death suit, which, of course, get a good line from Deborah there, that in situations like this, during a wrongful death settlement, they would have to consider a lot of things about the person to decide who's worth more. Now, I will say, the stuff that Robert brings up, part of that is his, at times, anti-Raymond and pro-Deborah bias. And the only thing he really pulls out with Ray is the fact that he earns the paycheck. Now, him not being a nurturing parent, yeah, I could see that biting him in the butt. Because as we've seen multiple times, Ray, while he loves his kids, loves hanging out with them in small doses, he's not the most nurturing father. While he is a better father than, say, Frank was, and definitely a better father than his grandfather Albert Barone was, you could tell he's still not entirely comfortable with it. But it's just a couple steps in the right direction, as they touched on in the Civil War episode. Your great-great-grandchildren will probably be excellent parents. But here, yeah, it's going to bite him in the butt. There probably should be a couple other things. He enjoys golf. He has a good sense of humor. Some other stuff to throw in there. But like I said, that's Robert's bias there. Now, tie back in with Frank. Some of what he says is a little misogynistic, but it is in keeping with his character. And it's really shot down once he exits stage right. And then Marie calls him out on it. Like him saying that I control the money and I will retire to the castle. And Marie's like, he can say whatever he wants. He never controlled the money. We find out that the entire time Marie was controlling the money. Once Frank fell asleep, either on his own or from him eating a heavy meal she produced, she moved the money around and did a lot of stuff with it. Like we find out Marie has been paying for children in South America to read Curious George for years. And definitely Frank would not have approved of that. And as Robert backs up, Frank did not like buying them books. Which shows if he's not going to buy books for his own children, he's probably not going to buy books for children in South America. Ray does wonder a little bit about this with what Deborah's doing, which is where that checkbook episode connection comes back into it. Now, he tries to find out more about what she did because Marie brings up the fact that back early in their marriage, she did loan some money to Deborah because she needed it. They were in a tight spot. He hadn't got his bonus. And, it's family. Can't really put a big price on family, even though Deborah shoots back that she did pay back the loan. Now, like I said, Ray tries to figure out more stuff that Deborah's doing, but Deborah tries to shoot the subject away, and it's Robert, who really does, like, hey, come on, Cubby, whatever she's doing is working. Just don't question the peanut like a good little monkey. Now, Ray should already have a good idea of some of the stuff that Deborah does here, because he had the checkbook a couple years ago and he saw how she did everything. As Andy put it, Deborah had everything in order. Deborah. So Ray already has an idea of how she moves the money about, how she takes it out, puts some here for the kids' college, pays some of the bills, pays this amount on there, pays that. And of course, he made it bad in that one by telling her to just pay the bills in a way that had Deborah look at him like, and he immediately regretted it. Now, Ray being Ray, he's probably forgotten some of that, at least consciously. It's probably in the back of his mind, and if Deborah brought it up, he'd be like, oh yeah, well, they're not going to fully bring it up, because they're not going to bring up stuff like that that's in continuity already unless they have to, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. But it would have been nice, at least, for them to do it, but it would have been one of those things like, yeah, it's a little too much to ask there. Now, Ray decides he's going to put it aside and now. Now, the two do make up, as you can kind of tell from some of the stuff I mentioned already. But it's probably going to hang over them like a cloud for a little bit. But Ray at least has learned, don't question your wife's usefulness just because she doesn't bring home a paycheck. And as for the whole thing, well, society demands that. It's like, nah, society doesn't measure that. Some people in society might, but as a whole, I don't think it measures the whole success based on the fact that she's the person that brings home a paycheck. Or at least, that's how it should be if you're going to try to argue the point that it's not like that. Now, bringing home a paycheck is good, but it's not the be-all, end-all. I mean, some people are going to be worth more just because of the amount of stuff they're able to do in the house. But just saying he's a more important one just because of that, no. That is definitely Ray channeling his dad's old school thinking there, which I'm glad that gets shot down in the episode. It's another thing I like to point out, especially as it's Marie that shoots it down, that while the Barones might be slightly conservative leaning when it comes to a lot of their beliefs, there are times when Marie comes in with a liberal idea, and that would be that one. Of course, then there's other times where she says, like, oh, that's right, we're feminists. Marie, technically you are too. You're just a little F feminist, not a big F feminist. I'm not going to go into the differences of that here. If you guys want to know the difference, Google is your friend. Now, the ending scene does tie back into the whole Curious George thing and Frank getting his mind diverted by food, so a nice little epilogue moment there. Not really much else to talk about in this episode. It's another fun episode to watch, another big example of Season 5's writing. Nice to see Bob Odenkirk and Brian Posehn back, even if it's a brief scene with their characters. And sadly, this is the last time we see their characters. They never pop up again, probably because of them having their own scheduling conflicts and all that. Brian, his comedian work, and Bob being busy with other projects. Of course, eventually he'd get Breaking Bad. And seeing him in a suit right here, even though he's a bit younger than what he is a couple years later, and the lighting's different because it's more sitcom lighting is more like stage lighting applied to a theater setting. So he's going to come off looking a little different, especially since they use different types of camera setups. But you could definitely tell he's channeling a little bit of his Better Call Saul nature there with how he looks in the suit, just he's wearing glasses. So he looks a little different. Looks like Saul trying to cosplay as Clark Kent. Now, I didn't talk about this teleplay yet, but it's written by two people, Jason Gellis and Mike Hockham, who both wrote Big Shots. And like with that one, they definitely feel the essence of the characters. All I will say that this episode is definitely more rewatchable for me personally than that one is. Big Shots, it's an every now and then one. This probably will go on the VHS list. I'm going to have to wait and see because I don't know how many episodes I'm going to put on that list. Probably going to try to put at least 5 to 6 episodes from each season on there, but I'm not holding that in stone until we get to that because we still got 4 seasons of episodes to get through before we get to that list. So another 1.5 to 2 years, give or take, depending on how many episodes I put per week, because I know there's probably going to be a couple weeks in the future where I might do 2 depending on how many I have in the can, but that's a knock on wood thing. That's really all to say about this one. Definitely, like I said, worth watching and worth watching repeatedly. The next one is one that, depending on how you look at things, might be just a one and done one and then goes on the skip list. Might be one where you really get a kick out of it due to the premise. For me, it's been a depending on my mood episode, and that's going to be The next phase of the Robert Stefania drama, and this time we get a little bit of Amy and Judy thrown into the mix. Of course, that's going to be Let's Fix Robert. Oh, this should be a fun revisit. Till next time, guys.